Today is the day that Donald Trump's fake tariffs go into effect. He has imposed a higher import tax on dozens of countries, just as the economic fallout of his months-long tariff threats have begun to cause visible damage to the US economy. And Trump is panicking. Don't get me wrong. It is a way, again, to mine the poor for their cash, steal it, and give it to the rich. And why is that? Well, it's the US consumer that pays for these products when they are imported. The exporter does not. So it does seem a little confusing that it's a game, that countries are trying to negotiate a good deal. But they're not negotiating a good deal for themselves. They're negotiating a good deal for the customers in the US, who are ultimately going to have to pay the price of the tariffs. And if the tariff is too high, then the American consumer is not going to want to carry the weight of that additional cost. So countries are doing their best to cut a deal, give Donald Trump a win, give him something to announce. That's all he really wants. But does Donald Trump realize that it's not the exporter that pays the tariff? Probably not. Tariffs is something that he has talked about for decades, and sadly, he's got it completely wrong. It's like the elephant in the room that the American consumer and the importer pays for the tariff, and we're all having to pretend, for the sake of Donald Trump, the world's dumbest president, that he's right and we're all wrong. Just after midnight, goods from more than 60 countries and the European Union became subject to tariff rates of 10% or higher. Products from the EU, Japan, South Korea are taxed at 15%, while imports from Taiwan, Vietnam, and Bangladesh are taxed at 20%. Trump also expects the EU, Japan, and South Korea to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States. Nothing is in writing. Nothing has been agreed. These are just things that these leaders have had to say to get Trump off their back, so that Trump has something to announce. If you look into the details of any of these things, they're just concepts of a plan. But that's good enough for Donald Trump, because, as we know, with him, this is entirely performative. Trump said on Wednesday, "I think the growth is going to be unprecedented." He said the US was taking in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, but did not provide a specific figure for revenues because we don't even know what the final number is regarding the rates. And that's Trump all over. He doesn't actually know. And his panic is so blatant that today he brought out all these charts in the Oval Office and summoned reporters to see these charts that, he loves a chart. He thinks it adds some kind of authenticity to a random topic. And he claims that they show that the US economy is solid, following a terrible jobs report last week that raised red flags and led to Trump firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I mean, imagine that. You don't like the jobs numbers, so what do? You don't make a plan to get people back into work? No, you just fire the statistician and everything will be fine.
I was telling the president that he did the right thing in calling for a new head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because this shows that over the last 2 years of the Biden administration, the BLS overestimated job creation by 1.5 million jobs. Mr. President, that's a gigantic error. And I don't know if she's...
It might not have been an error. That's the bad part. If it was an error, it would be one thing. I don't think it's an error. I think they did it purposely.
Whether that, you may well be right, but even if it wasn't purposefully, it's incompetence.
Right.
Okay, so 1.5 million jobs overestimated. We have access to the... some data that no one else does on what has happened month by month with median household income. This is based on unpublished Census Bureau data. It will be released sometime in the next 6 months, but we get an advanced look at it.
And if that's not a clue as to how Trump is going to be operating going forward, then I don't know what is. He basically is controlling the flow of information. Nothing that we read going forward is going to be based in truth. It's just based on Trump's version of events.
These numbers just came out, by the way.
Yep. And then finally, these are the numbers just I just showed you in percentage terms. Mr. President, these are the numbers in dollar terms. So even the lowest income 25th percent, gained about $4,000 income. That's a lot for a lower income family.
Joining Trump in the Oval Office to talk about the economy was Stephen Moore, a senior visiting fellow in economics. Where? At the Heritage Foundation. Ah, yes, the think tank that thought up Project 2025. He wrote the 2018 book Trumponomics. While flipping through a series of charts on an easel, Moore sought to elevate Trump's performance as a president and diminish the economic track record of former President Joe Biden. Remember, when Joe Biden was president, jobs were improving, the inflation was coming down, and the economy was in a good place. Trump has already ruined that, and still is blaming Joe Biden.
$6,400 for the middle class and almost $10,000 for the richest. So you can see every income group did better under Trump than Biden by a wide margin. That's the story.
I think when you look at them, they're all something, but this one chart really says it better than anything. If you look at this is great, but this chart is pretty amazing right here. All new numbers. Okay.
The moment in the Oval Office spoke to the president's hopes to reset the narrative of the US economy, while the stock market has fluttered but ultimately is ignoring Donald Trump for the time being, knowing that he changes his mind every 5 minutes, and if they reacted every time he came up with another random number for another random country in terms of tariffs, then they would probably go out of business. So they've decided to just let him get on with it. But job growth has turned sluggish and inflationary pressures have risen in the wake of Trump imposing these new tariffs, which are taxes on imports. That's all. So to create another distraction, Trump announced that he's nominating a top economic advisor to the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors for 4 months, temporarily filling a vacancy while continuing his search for a longer-term appointment. Trump said he'd named Stephen Moran, the chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, to fill a seat vacated by Adriana Kugler, a Biden appointee who's stepping down on Friday as governor. Moran, if appointed by the Senate, will serve until the 31st of January. Well, the appointment is Trump's first opportunity to exert more control over the Fed, one of the few remaining independent federal agencies. Trump has relentlessly criticized the current chair, Jerome Powell, for keeping short-term interest rates unchanged, calling him a stubborn moron last week on social media. Why is Jerome Powell doing this? Because Jerome Powell does not buy into Trump's ridiculous tariffs and this idea that trickle-down economics will just benefit the economy as a whole. There is no evidence of that historically, and it certainly won't work this time either. Moran has been a strong defender of Trump's income tax cuts and tariff hikes, arguing that the combination will generate enough economic growth to reduce budget deficits. He's also played down the risk of Trump's tariffs generating higher inflation, a major source of concern for Jerome Powell. The reality here is that economists who are not tied to Donald Trump, who are not conservatives, who are not in the cult of Trump, are the ones raising the alarm. So what does Trump do? He just replaces them with loyalists. And we've seen this in every single government department, an authoritarian takeover of the federal government by a dictator. It's actually happening. This is not something that we are warning of. This is happening right now. Every single department, from education through health, is being run by people who are in service to Donald Trump. They don't work for you. They don't work for the country. They work for Donald Trump. Whatever he says goes. And so they are merely figureheads taking direction from their supreme leader. This is extremely dangerous, and this is why we have to acknowledge and accept that this authoritarian takeover is complete. It is not something that is far off and that, or if we're not careful, we could fall into authoritarianism. It has already happened, and democracy hangs in the balance because the last remaining thing we really have is the vote. And we now know that Trump is seeking to rig the vote for the midterms with redistricting in Texas and elsewhere. So we really are stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, and only your voice, your protest, your right to a vote, as long as it remains, is essential. it's not good to stay home. It's not good to bury your head in the sand and pretend this isn't happening. This is happening. And so we have to take the consequences very seriously, because right now things might be okay, but remember, the economy moves slowly, and in 6 months to a year, things will get very difficult. Not to mention fruit and vegetable pickers that have been deported, and the employment vacuum that we are seeing in agriculture, which will ultimately mean that there could be less food on the shelves. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.meidastouch.com. All 100% USA union made.